So, welcome. Nice to meet you, man.
Pleasure meeting you, man. I'm happy to be here.
My name's Jason.
Yes. I know who you are. Very excited to be here. And well, nice to meet you. My name is Gian Varela.
Nice. So, are you in Miami, New York, or
Yes, sir. Miami.
in Miami? Okay, great weather.
Based in
Huh?
yes, based in Miami. Very similar weather to Panama, being back home, but actually less hot.
Really? Is it
Yeah.
more humid or no?
People complain about the Miami weather, but to me, it's like pretty chill. Panama in
It's
comparison can be
super.
yeah. Panama's extremely hot. Yeah.
Oh wow. Is it super humid too? Like you sweat a lot?
Yes, both.
Man, yeah. Because I grew up in Hong Kong and Taiwan, very close to the equator as well.
Yeah, it can get quite warm. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's awesome. How many years have you been in Miami now?
Actually, I've only been here for 2 years.
Oh.
So first year I wasn't even really here. First year I was like traveling a lot back and forth from Panama. It was the year right after the pandemic. So
Mm.
the world was kind of opening up. And it was I feel like this second year is the year that I feel like finally at home, when you stop feeling like a tourist or somebody that
Mm.
doesn't live there. I don't have to put ways anymore for everything.
I see. You kind of be like, I remember how to get here.
Yeah.
I see. I see. Is
Yeah.
this the first like away from home kind of city you've lived in, or have you stayed?
No, I was born and raised in Panama, but I like to say that musically speaking, I was raised mainly in United States. I
Oh,
studied in United States and worked in the United States, and well, my first school was in Connecticut, and then I moved to Washington D.C. But with living and studying in the United States for more than like 7 years, um, really gave me the musical feeling and the musical drive that I had. That wasn't available in Panama, because in Panama, dance music was not really, it's still not really the leading genre in that aspect, right? There's not many events going on in
mhm.
comparison to DC and New York, which was amazing for me. So very
Yeah.
exciting.
I mean, do you feel like it's kind of improved over the years, or like in Panama?
I definitely feel like it's improved. I feel like overall, the Central American hemisphere, all the territory, is now more and more getting into house music, especially now with the rise of Latin house and Latin tech house.
Mm,
This concept is getting pretty big in Central America, which in the past everything was mainly reggaeton and the more urban Latin genres.
I see. And do you feel like maybe like that being popularized has something to do with being more popularized here in the US as well?
100%. I mean, listen, I love reggaeton and I
Mm.
love Latin music, but I'm a Latino that grew up with house music. My mother was a DJ, and she was the one who taught me how to DJ, and she was one of the first radio hosts back home. But she
Oh.
wasn't a host for a reggaeton radio station. She was a host for an international music radio station. So what would be played would be classic rock, a lot of classic rock: Van Halen, Aerosmith, Led Zeppelin,
Mm.
Boston, um, international rap, but like straight up rap, like Spanish rap, like not just hip hop, rap music.
Mm.
And house music. And that time was mainly trance. That
Mm.
was my upbringing.
Wow, is that kind of like the like 90s or early
Yup,
2000s?
90s, 1995, those the 90s, yeah.
Wow, that yeah, because you mentioned
But
trance and that I was guessing around that
it
era.
was when, Tiesto was releasing his In Search of Sunrise compilations, which one of the In Search of Sunrise compilations he did was Panama.
Oh,
And then you had Paul Oakenfold with Planet Perfecto. Yeah, it was those times.
what
And
a
that
time.
was how, like, I came into dance music.
That's so cool that your mom was literally a DJ radio host. That
I know. It really was. It was really nice. Panama, like,
uh,
it's funny because she was a DJ and then a radio host, but then she also became a very big news anchor. But in Panama, it's a small country. We only have 4 million people. And only 1 million in the city itself.
mm,
So celebrities and like people in the industry tend to have like different careers too, from DJ to news anchor to radio host to event producing to everything in one usually.
I see. It's like if
Yeah,
if you're famous enough, you can kind of do
do
it.
whatever the hell you want. Yeah, exactly.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really cool. Do you that I don't think I've met someone whose like mom was literally a radio host and like mom taught him or her how to DJ. Because like the usual, I mean, a lot of the people that we talk to on this show, it's kind of like, oh, my parents were like, what? No, don't be a DJ. You know, that's kind of the more.
No, don't get me wrong. That happened too, though.
Oh, really?
That also happened. Even though my mother was a radio host and a DJ, I think it was a very different thing being a radio DJ and a host and working on a television station than, saying, mom, dad, I want to be a house music DJ and tour the world. First things they were thinking at that time were like, are you crazy? Or like, are you doing like, the typical connotation of parents, right? Like, are you doing drugs? Like, what's going on, man? Like, what's going on? I was like, no, not at all. Like, I love music, that's what's up.
Yeah, I'm here for the music, mom. Don't worry. Like, I might be out till 8 a.m., but nothing's going on.
The first time that they said, okay, we should actually help him out and support him, because this might be a big thing, was that for some reason, my mother and my old man were also in Honduras at the same time that I was playing in Honduras, opening for, rest in peace, Avicii.
Oh.
So that was the first time they saw me performing, right? Like in front of a lot of people. And they're like, oh, yeah, why not? Let's go see him play, right? I was like, mom, dad, come see me play, right? And I played right before Avicii. And that's when they were like, all right, he actually has something going on. And from that day forward, they started being way more supportive and way more like, they started asking more, all that stuff.
So it was like they really had to see like the result of like, wow, this is actually something.
Yes. It's not just me being crazy, but that's what I thought.
That's really interesting because I guess, yeah, being a radio host for it's still a little bit more corporate, I guess. Like
it is.
While like kind of being a freelance, it's more like a freelance kind of no job kind of job, if you know what I mean?
Yep.
So I could see like why your parents maybe still had that reaction.
It was also because the concept of nowadays, like the DJ being the superstar, I guess in those times was a bit more underground. It was maybe starting off, and then of course once Avicii hit levels and you had the whole surge of house music across the world, I think it became like way bigger. I don't know how would you say it? Yeah. In Central America, by the way, Central America, not around the world. So of course, around the world, various DJs had a lot of career already.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess you're talking about kind of like, I guess maybe pre-Tiesto and maybe some of these really early guys, like the DJs in the clubs were like in the corner and like nobody looked at them.
Exactly. That was the connotation they had. That was the idea.
I see. Yeah, I mean that whole like transition with like the early 2010s like into DJ superstardom, Avicii, Skrillex, all those guys.
Yeah.
Like I feel like, looking back, that was like historical,
Yeah.
Like what a time, right? Yeah, it's like really interesting that like I don't know, how do you feel about the scene as it's like since that point? Do you feel like it's gone even more, or it's kind of like the like for a moment it felt like dance music was the pop music or in those times?
In those times, yeah. I mean, it's interesting because, for example, you have the reggaeton genre, right? And big producers like Tiny, Luna, and like all these guys, right? But a lot of the new reggaeton producers are using a lot of dance music sounds. They started fusing and using techniques that dance music producers have from years before, from synthesizers to LFOs to so many different ways of producing that you started hearing the dance music sounds getting into all different genres, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like for a moment, house music and dance music kind of hit itself while reggaeton and like the other genres were going hard.
Yeah.
But once the pandemic hit, it definitely feels like house music just surged to a completely different level, right? And I think it's interesting because, at least for me, right, when dance music was so big, you would have the term commercial and underground, right? Where you would definitely define, commercial, big room, dubstep, trap, EDM, right? And then the underground would be the house music, Afro house, tech house. But nowadays, it's not like that. Nowadays, I feel like the barriers between underground and commercial have gone quite down. And now you have acts like James Hype, Mal P, John Summit, doing what in the past would be underground music, now being the most streamed music across platforms and really people enjoying it. Like I have friends that would never even think of listening to house music or dance music overall. But now with this house music fusion and house music reigning across parties, events, they do.
Yeah.
And that's interesting because once again, with Latin music also having such a strong impact in the past years, it opened the door wide open for Latin house and Latin tech house. That artists like Hugel, John Summit, and Matroda, Sampacho, myself are all trying to push and pushing more and more, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm excited.
Yeah. So you think, I mean, my theory about like the surge post pandemic was like maybe like like while everyone was kind of like streaming, you know, it was kind of like sit on the couch and kind of vibe kind of thing. Like maybe the more club-esque, especially like tech house, it's a lot more vibey than a lot of like the harder house records that were
yes definitely
like that. Yeah.
I also feel like something must have helped, since there were so many underground raves and underground parties being thrown in the pandemic. I will accept I myself through various of those illegal events in Panama. You know, I think it's the tradition of house music. That's how it started, right? In warehouses being just illegal parties. But I think that helped out a lot. I think those house parties from in Miami, Central America, Europe, everywhere around the world really pushed the house genre. I remember I moved to Miami for a little while during the pandemic because, well, Panama was quite closed and Miami seemed to something be going on. And once I got over here, some friends of mine were like, hey, you should come to an event with us. And I was like, this might be a small event. You know, I'm not living with anybody. It's okay. I'm not going to infect anybody. And when I got to the place, it was 1,500 people in a full-on rave going on, completely underground. I was like, wow. And it was an amazing party and people were raging. I think so many people infected so many people, but it was still awesome, you know?
Yeah.
And it was weird because when I was asking people, they were all like, hey, listen, in the end, the majority of people here live by themselves, don't contact with anybody. They just come, party, back home. And of course, the party got shut down by police and everything, but still an amazing party, you know?
Wow. Yeah.
It was really, really good party.
Is that even underground at that? I guess.
I mean, 1,500 people, but it's a lot. I don't know how underground that is exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe let's just wind it a little back. So you were talking about, you know, growing up in Panama. So I guess maybe from what I'm understanding, your kind of musical upbringing is a little like not standard with a lot of kids growing up in Panama. Like, did you have a lot of friends liking the same kind of music or?
Not the majority, definitely not the majority, and it's never been the majority until now. It seems like now it is the majority. But in the past, no, because everybody was focused on reggaeton. So my upbringing in Panama was different, and also because my friends were very international. So a mother who was a radio host to classic rock, classic rap, and house music, trance music, dance music, anything you want to call it. And then having international friends, I really connected with my international friends in dance music, right? Some of them would even listen to like the Euro pop stuff, right? And that was something that we all had in common. And then, of course, I always, you know, Panama is such an amazing country and it's beautiful and everybody should visit it. But it is small for an artist, and especially for a dance music producer who wanted to see the world. And having all my friends, you know, friends from Asia, friends from Europe, from United States, from Africa, I always knew there was a world out there. And I was always so interested in it that I would feel like a big fish in a small pond. So once I travel outside of Panama and I start living outside in the United States and I encounter myself with this club culture in New York City, you know, Sebastian Ingrosso, Calvin Harris when he had the fly eyes. I don't know if you that's so old school, right? I feel old saying that. I'm not even old. It's just I was raving since I'm very little, right? I was a full-on house music addict. But that was my upbringing. So I always went this way. And I get it. You know, I would definitely say I was different. I had a different taste. I had a different, you know, a different view on what I wanted for parties, for dance music, while everybody did like reggaeton and like you had Daddy Yankee, Wisin y Yandel, Tiny, not Tiny, sorry, Tiny wasn't there at those times. Yeah, I was full on house music and actually even like hard rock, or like just I really wouldn't listen to the reggaeton, you know, very few of the reggaeton records. So I was different in that way.
So was there kind of like a moment where you kind of went from a fan to like, I want to do this as well?
Excuse me?
Was there like a moment, you know, growing up where you were like, well, obviously at first you're just like a fan of the music, right? But then what was like the switch that you were like, I want to be a DJ, I want to be on stage just like them? You know, was it like a record or you saw someone live?
No, yeah, when I saw Tiesto at that time, seeing Tiesto and seeing somebody performing and managing so much people, right? I was like, wow. And when I'm sorry, managing, I mean, you know, controlling like so many people. I was control. Like, yeah, crowd control. I was like, wow, I had never seen something like that. I mean, I knew the concept of being a DJ, but I didn't think it was this big. And I loved, you know, the stage, the show, the synchronization of lights, lasers, everything. You know, I started getting way deeper into the culture, you know, doing my homework, seeing movies. There was like 3 movies I saw. It's all gone Pete Tong, a documentary of Luciano, La Ruta del Sol, and another movie called Groove, which I think it was John Digweed who was playing in the movie. Yeah. It was, and I was really addicted to the culture. I was like, I want to know more about it. I want to get into it more. I want to get into raves. And well, back home, yeah, there were certain raves in Panama, very few, but any rave available, I'd be down. I'd be there. Very small ones though.
Yeah. Well, I've heard you say like culture like so many times now. Well, speaking of which, like congratulations on your first ever EP.
Yes, first ever EP.
Debut EP. Could you kind of talk a little bit about the album title and you know what the whole EP means to you?
Of course. So, La Otra Cultura, it means the other culture. You might have heard Latin artists say para la cultura, which means for the culture. Latinos are very proud of our culture, but our culture is so large and so wide, from Mexico all the way down to Argentina, right?
Yeah.
Even the Brazilian culture is something completely different, even though it's also Latino too. So I wanted to embrace that difference, and I wanted to celebrate the diversity of Latino culture, especially with the Latinos that grew up with house music, that grew up with a different style of music and taste. And it's interesting because reggaeton culture is one culture, and inside reggaeton there's different cultures. You have the culture of, for example, very recognizable artist Fade, which right now is pushing the motorcyclist culture of Colombia. Then you have Rosalia with the Spanish culture. Now you have Peso Pluma with the Mexican culture and corridos and everything. There's a whole dance music culture to Central and South America that I think needs more pushing so people can know of it, learn of it, you know, from Colombia all the way down to Uruguay, to Punta del Este, to the artists like Luciano, artists like Gordo from, Carnage Gordo from Nicaragua. There's a lot happening for Latino dance music. And I wanted to celebrate that. I wanted to honor that. So I said, all right, if the world knows Latin music mainly as reggaeton, well, house music would be the side B of the EP, of the vinyl. It would be the vinyl. I don't know how to say it. The other side, you know, maybe the dark side of it. Some people like that. It was just the celebration of being different and having different roots and different tastes in music, you know, different ways of dressing, different ways of being, of talking, of thinking, of everything. So a complete different culture. And I would find myself when I was working with different reggaeton artists and Latin artists and rappers, and they would ask me like, and they would tell me, dance music culture is different, right? I was like, yeah. Like, why do you guys dress always in black? And it was like, well, because when we're touring, it's just easy to put on, put off, and we always look like slim and elegant and modernistic and futuristic, right? It's interesting, you know. And it's like, you guys don't, for example, another artist was like, so in dance music, the DJ is the main artist and the singer is not always the main artist. And I was like, yeah, I mean, sometimes of course it's not like that because the singer is huge also, but yes, because in reggaeton and Latin culture, the producer is always behind the main artists. It's not until now that Tiny actually has his own album now, which has Skrillex on it and I think Fortet too. And that's full on of a reggaeton producer being the superstar. That wasn't like that in the past. Like that's something new. But Tiny also comes from a lot of dance music influence, and you can hear it in his sounds. He's done house also, and he has Skrillex in his album. There's reggaeton producers who don't even know who Skrillex is. And I know, right? For us, it's like, how do you not know who Skrillex is? It's the same thing if I tell you, or somebody in dance music, like, do you know who Tego Calderon is? And they'll be like, no idea. And the guy's a legend for Latinos, right?
It's like a whole different world, huh?
Whole different worlds. And for me, it's exciting to try fusing those worlds together. And there's so much to explore and to produce that. That's the idea.
Yeah. Well, like on the whole EP, it's like such a wide variety of collaborations. And just looking at the list of all the artists, I feel like only you could have put them all on like a product.
A list, yeah.
You know, it's like it's a very unique list of collaborators on a project. And maybe you could talk a little bit about some memorable moments working with the people or some of your favorite, you know, things.
I mean, the entire EP has been so memorable to me because it's definitely changed my career and my life. This EP, the majority of the EP, I produced it in the pandemic, the first ideas. And when I meet Maxim, the director of Mixmash, he's the one that he was like, all right, show me your music. You know, we met last Miami Music Week. Yeah, last year.
Oh.
And they were like, you know, we're looking to sign an artist exclusively to push with L.O.C. Show us your music. And I told them my project. I was like, listen, I'm Panamanian. I wanna push the Latin genre with dance music. That's something I've always done my entire life. In the past, I was more of an EDM guy with records that were 150 BPM and everything, right? But I was still trying to fuse it with Latin music. But in the pandemic, I definitely like found that love for house music, and my sound completely changed, right? And I made this EP and presented it to Maxim, and Maxim was like, I have to show this to Playback L.O.C. And when he goes to L.O.C. and he shows it, apparently something kicked off, and L.O.C. was like, I want to collaborate with him in Pome Loco. I want you guys to sign him to Mixmash now as the exclusive art, as our new exclusive artist, and let's get an EP going from this kid, because like there's something really awesome with his music. And when I got the news, you know, my manager calls me and he's like, yo, Mixmash wants to sign you. And I was like, what? I did not ever expect that. And to me, Mixmash is one of the most respectable labels. L.O.C. himself is one of the most respectable artists in the dance music world. That when they co-signed my EP and they start working with me to get it, you know, out and ready, it was a dream come true. So of course, creating Pome Loco with Laid Back L.O.C. was a dream come true. Was a bucket list goal, and it really motivated me to keep on pushing, because I was like, wow, you know, like in 2 years, like now I'm collaborating with Laid Back L.O.C. And then opportunities continue to come and you had, you know, Lo Que Siento with Tom Enzi. Oiga Morena was by myself, but that record was it's awesome because Oiga Morena is a very classical Panamanian record. And right now it's the record with the most streams on my EP, and it's the one that's definitely kicking off with the support of so many big DJs. So it's like 3 birds, 1 stone, right? Listening to a legendary Panamanian record being played by so many DJs around the world and having so much support, signed by Mixmash, and being the leading record of my EP, very exciting for me. Very exciting.
Wow, that does sound amazing. I mean,
but it was awesome, and it's a song I've been hearing since I was very little.
How was like his, you know, I guess a lot of times with the new generation and a bit of an older generation, how was, you know, kind of describe or like showing him like what, you know, the kind of music you're pushing now was for him?
He honestly, he had no idea what the hell was going on at first. it was kind of funny. Yeah. He was like, I don't get it. How did you do this? And I was like, well, I kind of ripped your vocals from the song. And I was like, how did you do that? And I was like, well, did this and that. Yeah, yeah, but it sounds so crisp and so nice. Like, how did you do that? And I was like, well, I put this compressor and this EQ on it. You know, it's like kids nowadays have like so many different toys and stuff. I don't get any of this, but it sounds awesome. And I was like, yes. So it was really fun. I got to have it's called an accordion. It's like this like accordion.
Accordion.
Yeah. So in accordion, he taught me accordion.
Oh, really?
In the studio session. Very hard instrument. Mad respect for him, because it's not a piano. It's very complicated and it makes no sense at all. It's one of the most chaotic instruments I've ever played.
Well, that's like an icon for like Central American kind of music.
It is, but it's extremely complicated. You know, like if you play a guitar, the guitar is, you know, the last note all the way up. It keeps going up. The chords keep going up. Yeah. And it's a piano, left to right. You know, the tones go up.
Yeah.
It's not like that with an accordion. It's random. At least from what I understood, it was like, all right, no, this is this note and this is that. And I was like, how do you improvise? Like, well, you kind of remember where the notes are, and if you open it, it's one scale. If you close it, it's a different scale. And I was like, all right, this is definitely like on a pro. This is way too much on a pro time, you know, pro level. But working Oiga Morena with Nenito Vargas was also an amazing experience for me. And now I have so many different folk artists hitting me up to recreate records and to do new records and work some from scratch, which is also very fun.
Oh, really? So you kind of got that became like a thing that some of the older folk artists want to do now.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Wow.
I don't know when the interview comes out, but I think when it comes out, Wataki should already be out. That's like my first release after my EP. And it's also a folk song, but it's a folk song from Colombia with Martina Camargo. And it's similar to Oiga Morena in that aspect. That one's already, but Wataki is already an existing record. It's very recognized globally. But there's other records that are coming out later that are from scratch, but they're still folk records. So it's like, I want to put myself a challenge of, what if we do a modern folk record, even though it sounds like a folk record with dance music, and seeing what comes off, what comes out.
This, I mean, like, to me, like, this is the first time I've kind of like heard. I guess this is your thing now, huh? Like the kind of resampling Panamanian folk records.
I mean, I
Or
wouldn't say it's my thing because it's been done before, and it's been done before Latin music or Latin house music was a big thing. I definitely love that right now records like Hugel's records are being huge. But we do also need to give respect to artists that have done this for a long time. Like the Latin house music has existed for a while. But it was way more underground. Like I remember seeing like Loco Dice, Seth Troxler, even Carl Cox and Luciano, all these artists play some very powerful Latin house music in Ibiza, for Argentina, for Ushuaia, all these places that were iconic Spanish records, right? So it's just that now I feel like the entire world is listening to it, where in the past it was more of a niche, a very hidden community.
I see. Okay.
But I'm excited. I'm still excited though. There's so much to play around with, and so much to explore.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of times, like, I mean, obviously, if you want to, there's nothing is like original. If you want to go down that route, everything's been done. It's kind of like a remix of something else. But like sometimes the modernization and fusing of like old ideas or polishing ideas that came before you, while paying that respect to it,
Yes,
is just great. As a modern art form as well.
Yes, and one thing, and for new producers so what I believe that's something that might be coming out more and more nowadays is that a lot of the Latin house records that you're listening to around the world are samples from big Latin records. And then also to some point, I guess maybe for the world, this is all new, but for some Latinos, we've heard these records 1,000 times before, right? But there's a wave of producers, myself included, that are doing records that are from scratch and actually created from scratch with writers, with artists that are authentic to Central and South America, like Dominican rappers. And that is extremely, extremely interesting. And I think it's going to be a strong differentiator in records that are going to come in the future. A great example is Gordo and Fade, Hombres y Mujeres, right? I mean, they just sat down in the studio, Gordo does a beat, and Fade wrote on it. And it's an authentic, 100% created from scratch record, right? Instead of just grabbing the same Lírico en la Casa vocal that has been remixed or reworked 10 times. I mean, I've done that too. But of course, it's funner. It's way more exciting when you grab records that haven't been done before, or you do it from scratch.
Yeah.
It's more exciting.
Almost like creating your own sample to sample.
Exactly. Creating a new classic, yeah.
Yeah, a new classic, then you resample immediately,
Exactly.
Yeah. That's really cool. I've noticed that in a lot of other things as well. I interviewed this other drum and bass producer. His thing has been like his uncle was like a country singer from Texas, and he's been like kind of sampling, or like not sampling, just straight up writing with his uncle and turning them into like drum and bass fucking straight bangers. So that's really cool, honestly.
That's dope.
It's a great idea. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So let's so you study business, actually, I read. Huh?
Business of entertainment.
Of entertainment. Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I went full on for music entertainment. And I when I was young, I knew this was gonna be my life, and I had nobody change my mind. I was
So you were more on the kind of like business aspect of things, or like,
well, it's funny because I have a colored shirt right now because I was in a business meeting today. But I'm a believer that artists nowadays should also have a good, or at least a basic understanding of the business side of things in dance music, because I think that's one of the first challenges, right, in music is how can I make a living off this and live off this and dedicate myself at 100%? Because if you don't dedicate yourself to 100% of this, how are you going to actually put out enough content and enough things to really be, you know, interesting for record labels and for anybody in the music industry? You really want to dedicate yourself to this. But of course, it's easier said than done. You need to find a way of living off your music. So the first thing I told myself was, well, Jesus Christ, I'm in Panama. There's no dance music here. I need to find a way of living off my music, but being able to keep on working what I actually love, and bit by bit do that switch, right? So I started off being, you know, in DC, I was secretary for Glow, the company that does Echo Stage, and I was a secretary. I was carrying, you know, my ex-boss Pete's papers around, right? It's funny because I saw him last time at the Ultra backstage. So I was amazing, right? Like I was like, what are you doing here? And I was like, yeah, I'm here, you know, to being the secretary in a company, like, you know, bringing papers and emails. But hey, I was a secretary in an entertainment company, which because of that, you know, when somebody said, do we have a DJ in the office? We need somebody to open for this guy at Josephine. And I was like, I'm a DJ. And that's how those opportunities start kicking in. I did that same thing in Panama and always was available for those opportunities and just kept on pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing, business-wise and musically-wise. So I would always, you know, do that back and forth. I believe in artists like Jay-Z, building such empires from music. You have artists nowadays like Tale of Us with Afterlife, Tiesto with Musical Freedom, and there's so much to being an artist, and there's so many things to do, from your merchandise to your own events to your own record label to maybe one day your own like liquor brand, right? You know, I mean, Richie, not in the works, but in the future, definitely. Richie Hawtin had his own sake, I think. So things like that, right? Like there's so much to do, and it's really exciting when you start also seeing the business side of things to also push your musical career.
Did you also find like seeing like entertainment companies' infrastructure and how they run a company very helpful to like how you do yourself?
Yes, definitely. I mean, I've come to understand, I came to understand quite early not to sometimes take things personal, and also try to separate the business and the artistry of things. Because, I mean, we are artists, and this is my view personally, but we are artists and we always try to be different with our products. But you cannot be a crybaby and be like, oh, why haven't they signed me? You know, why hasn't the record label signed me? Well, you have to see, you have to ask yourself, really, why? Like, what's going on? Is your product not sellable? Is it not marketable? How can you meet in the middle to ensure that your art and your music, you respect it and you love it, but at the same time, it will keep you alive and it will keep you working more. It will bring you more stuff to the table. Because sometimes I feel like certain artists can be, they might not budge, right? You know, if an A&R says, hey, I love the idea, but what if you change the kick and the bass line? No, I can't do that. No way. Impossible. Absolutely not. That there might be the difference between having a hit record or not. Because maybe that record label could have pushed you to a way different area, or because of that record label, something happens, or maybe not. But if you're ready to not do it through a record label and do it independently, there's so many different routes. It's just, I find that being a bit flexible is always good.
Yeah.
And really trying to listen to different people.
Yeah.
But everything in life is it's not black and white, right?
Yeah.
There's so much in the middle.
Yeah. I mean, like, you know, it sounds like you found a good balance, but you know, like I know, and I've seen a lot of producers or DJs, like some of them fall on like the I'm just an artist and I will not budge for any corporation. I will just do whatever I want, no matter how many people listen to it. And then some make it like that, some don't. Some people, you know, maybe go too far in the business and lose, like they're just too generic, you know,
and lose their artistry. Exactly.
Yeah. So that balance is, you know, something that's really important for every artist's journey, I feel like. And it sounds like, you know, you're in a good place right now.
I am definitely, and I'm very excited with everything that's happening. Yes.
Yeah. So we read in another article that you said there's still a huge lack of transparency in the music industry, especially in Central America, and it's harder to differentiate between who can really execute and who talks a lot. Do you think that's still the case for you, or, you know, has it kind of changed?
I feel like it has changed, definitely. It's just location is so important in this industry, and I understood that to 100% when I moved to Miami. I mean, with the year I moved to Miami, everything changed for me. When you're in Central America, places like Panama, Honduras, Ecuador, Nicaragua, Guatemala, it's very hard to connect with the industry because there is no industry for our genre. And even for the reggaeton genre, a lot of people can say they can help you. A lot of people can say they have contacts, but you sometimes do not really know who they are, if it's real. I mean, you've most likely heard about those, like, I remember in the past, like 5 years ago, there were people who would charge you just to show your music to the dance music labels, but you would have no idea if they were actually working with the A&Rs or those labels or not.
Yeah.
And the majority of times, they would be scams. And I have 5 friends, like 6 DJ friends that fell for that.
Yeah.
Because being in Central America was very different than living in Amsterdam or in Miami or New York or LA, where at least you can find the office, right? And be like, here's my USB, or I don't know, or the emails, or I have, it's just that lack of transparency living in Central America it's like playing the game in hard in that way, that living in the places where these record labels are based off with these contacts, there's nobody, at least in Panama, there was nobody connected to nobody. And now I'm actively trying to promote and push Panamanian producers with these labels. And at least, I ask, for example, Lawrence from Mixmash, amazing A&R. And I tell him, hey, Lawrence, there's like 5 to 10 kids that really would love to show you music, whether you love it or hate it, which I love Lawrence in that aspect because he's very clear, very raw. We were having I'm going off the conversation, but we had a demo drop in ADE last year. And I was, it was my first demo drop. And I was being really nice to everybody, right? And I was like, yeah, like you might want to compress this kick. And then Lawrence on the other side, you just hear him like very passionate, like, you can't do this. This doesn't sound right. You got to do this. But hey, and I was like, wow, Lawrence is going hard to that new DJ kid. But that's what you need. And that's awesome. He's very real. And I think that's what differentiates great A&Rs with good A&Rs. And his input is not bad. It's just always very truthful, very real, and in a way that you can improve, right? And to me, that A&Ring is not available to Central Americans and South Americans quite a lot. Because there was one kid in the demo drop that flew from, I believe it was New York all the way to Amsterdam to do that,
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like, and I really respected that a lot. That's exactly what people have to do. But sometimes for Central Americans, it might be more complicated than that too.
Yeah. So do you have any advice for kind of maybe kids, I guess not specifically in Panama, but like maybe kids that maybe have a harder time on resources, who may not be able to, move to more central or like more hotspot locations for EDM or dance music? Like, what would you tell, some of our listeners maybe that, like, what would your advice be,
My advice would be, you have to try to be really, really to social media, but selective of where your information comes from. Nowadays, there's so much information on social media and everybody talks to you in your ears. There's so much opinion, so many different genres, so much stuff that it can be hard to really pinpoint what's going on in music, right? So the best way to really find out what's going on is make as much friends as possible online. Join Discord groups. Listen to what's going on. Check out the charts. Hear Spotify more, the major playlists, find out what the labels are looking for and find out what's happening outside of your territory or in those hotspots, right? Miami, New York, Los Angeles, wherever in the world that you think is a hotspot for you, whether it's, in Asia, specific places like Tokyo or South Korea, things like that. Find out what's going on. Try to absorb all that information and then choose for yourself what you want to do with your sound and your musical productions. And then just get to producing a lot. Nowadays, record labels, I would have not imagined this, but record labels want to output a lot of music. And that's why you have artists releasing 1 track a month, right?
Yeah.
I myself, I'm very aggressively releasing music, and it's because Spotify and the DSPs nowadays are the same as social media. You don't put content up on Instagram, It's not going to push you too much. If you don't put up too much content on Spotify or YouTube or any of these platforms, it's not going to grow. And Spotify is also it's also a number. It's just music, and this music can get you way more fans and way more listeners. And the cool thing about this is that it pushes you to produce. And records, even though sometimes people say that, oh, it's too much, it's too much short time between records, right? There's not enough time, sorry, between records. My English sometimes fails me.
No worries.
You have records that don't stop streaming. Oiga Morena was released almost a year ago for me, and now it's hitting 8,000 streams a day. It started off at 1,000, and now that's popping off. I mean, sometimes it happens like that. Now there's no rules to this. As long as you make records that you can really feel like they can surpass time, not just fads, right?
Records.
Yes, exactly. That would be my piece of advice for the new for producers, for anybody.
And I've also noticed like nowadays there's so much power to the independent artist as opposed to maybe 10, 20 years ago that musicians were so reliant on record labels. Like, I mean, in my experience talking to some people or other record labels, like sometimes you really have to prove yourself first now.
Yes.
And like you said, that you have to put in that work on social media and prove to these, because like record labels don't want to have to take a chance as much anymore, because if they have like one kid, two kids, they have great music, but like one kid has proven that he has a fan base somewhat, like they're probably going to go with that kid, you know?
The beautiful thing of dance music is that people shouldn't be intimidated by numbers, because I believe numbers in the dance music world, in our world, it's quite different. You know, for example, I always like to use this connotation. I mean, I'm not trying to bash the reggaeton genre at all, but you have a big reggaeton artist that can have 30 million monthly listeners in Spotify, and he can have 7 million followers in social media, but he might have only 3 shows a year, charging $40,000, $50,000, and then you put them next to Charlotte DeWitt, which Charlotte DeWitt has around 2 million monthly listeners. Not, well, maybe more, I think, but still, you know, the DJs that have 2 million, 6 million, 9 million, nothing close to these big pop stars or reggaeton stars, right? And they have way less followers than all these people, but they're touring way more, and they're way more expensive than the artists. It's not always about numbers, you know. It's more about you as an artist, your brand, your DJing, who you are. So people shouldn't be intimidated with that, and they shouldn't just look for record labels that can push a bunch of streams, because there's also artists that have a bunch of streams and a bunch of DJs that have millions of monthly listeners, and you don't see them touring or in the bigger festivals than artists that have smaller streams. Sometimes maybe the smaller artists are way more fun to work with. Maybe they're nicer. Maybe their sets are amazing. But there's so many different variables. I think it's more important to find a great team that will work with you and will feel like a family to you. You know, to me, I got a lot of record deals before Mix Smash, and we didn't feel like they felt like family, because I would be one more of the 100 producers or artists in the record label, and sometimes that's not the best thing. Sometimes it's better to be just you and one other artist and the entire team dedicated to you, and you're going to see a big change, maybe not in numbers, but in your career. And to me, that's been Mix Smash. Mix Smash has been like a family for me. So last advice from my end is sign with a family, not with a record label. You know, find your tribe, find your gang.
That's great advice. And I don't want to take up too much of your day. This has been a
you're
conversation.
Good, you're good.
Anything else you want to shout out? Anyone, or you want to tell us what to look out for in the future?
Well, guys, my journey, even though I've been in this for a while, to me it feels like it's just beginning. I think now is that there's a lot of music coming out from Wataki, which might already be out. I don't know when this comes out.
Probably next week or next week. Yeah.
Oh no, yeah. So Wataki is definitely out. And then quite soon, you'll have another record that I cannot announce yet, but it's another huge collab. There's so much happening. Please give me a shout out on social media. Hit me up. I respond to DMs. We're always there. We love to have new people joining us and having fun. There's the tours. The tour is going well. We've got New York coming up. You know, if you're around the area, Miami, there's a lot of stuff happening around the world. And I hope to see you guys at the party. Yeah.
Hell yeah. Well, I appreciate it. This has been great.
Oh, thank you so much, brother. Thank you for having me also.
All right, man. Talk to you next time.
Have a great day.